That you, Sugar Bumps? Who the hell are you?
It's me, Sugar Bumps.
Oh, thank God you're alive. I heard you'd been
Fried? Is that what you heard? You set me up over a woman. A woman! You must be insane. Don't bother.
Your life won't be worth spit!
I've been dead once already. It's very liberating. You should think of it as therapy.
Listen. Maybe we can cut a deal.
Jack? Jack is dead, my friend. You can call me Joker. And as you can see, I'm a lot happier. What a day.
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends talking nerdy.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim Jousma.
And this is Sterling.
And we are here today at Jousma Manor. We're going to be talking about comic books. We're still pretty stoked about the interview we had with Nick Marino, writer of Cougar and Cub. Holy fucked. One hell of an interview, and very, very nice guy, taking time out of his Thanksgiving day to record with us.
Yeah, man, that is a whole other level of commitment, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, so if you can, find him on Twitter at Nick Marino. You can go to Comixology or your local comic book shop and order Cougar and Cub. Even though he's not a fan of the publisher themselves, it's still a great story, and you should definitely check it out. But anyway, we're going to be talking about something we really haven't touched too much upon on the show to date, which is definitely surprising. The fact that pretty much everybody that's been on the show has been a fan of comic books. We're going to talk about comic books.
Hey, comic books. I like comic books.
Yeah, so you mentioned in the past episodes that you did a lot of your intro happened during hurricane season.
Oh, yeah.
So what comic books got you on the road to being a fan?
So it was actually a really weird story because Nick told a very funny story about how he found his comic books. We were at a public auction, and I don't know what kind of auction it was because I was really young, but I think it was a police auction. I'm not sure. But
why is this covered in blood, Mom?
Yeah. So we were at an auction, and I'm just kind of running around doing my 4-year-old, 5-year-old thing, and eating too much candy and getting sick. And I remember we come home, and my mom has a box, and my mom just gives me this box, and it's full of comic books. And I don't think she looked through them at all because there was the first iteration of Venom in him. There was a really, really great series called Dinosaurs for Hire, if you remember that series at all. No? Okay. No. It was a really, really fringe series at the time, and it's about dinosaurs who have been I don't know how they became that, but it was we're back. They have the ability to talk, but they're also mercenaries. And then there's a lot of like killing.
Because why not?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of killing, scantily clad women who end up being robots and like all kinds of weird stuff. And then you have, Justice League and Spider-Man and stuff thrown in there too. So it's not too bad, but that definitely got me going in the right way. And then a lot of the Spider-Man books in there, as well as the Venom series written in there and like kind of mixed in. And then you had some like not okay books for a kid to be reading, which was like, I'm trying to remember the names of the titles, but definitely rated like R or NC-17. And then it kind of gave me this wide spectrum of like, oh, superheroes. But then it's like, ooh, boobs.
Stan Lee After Dark.
And that it's always been books ever since, from Archie's Double Digest to heavy metal,
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I didn't really buy too many comics, but when you grew up in the era we grew up in, even me in my advanced age, you're familiar with these comic book properties,
Mm-hmm.
So while I didn't buy a comic until in my teens, definitely you're familiar with Superman, you're familiar with Spider-Man, the Super Friends, Batman, of course,
the
and
TV shows as well. It's just consumable media that's a lot easy and readily available, and it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, and they're very much, in my opinion, a part of the comic world because, it's the same characters, of course, and they whet your appetite to say, hey, I watched this great cartoon, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. It says Marvel. Marvel Comics is in the comic book shop. Hey, what if I buy that? Yeah. And go from there. But as a kid, what would you say were some of your favorite characters?
Oh, man. When I started religiously buying books, Green Lantern was going through its golden age of the color war, with Jeff Jones riding at the helm. It was so good. The Flash as well has always been a favorite of mine with Barry Allen. Barry Allen is definitely my favorite Flash, Jay Garrick being a close second.
No Wally West?
Nah, Wally's just kind of a hanger-on. He's fun, he's fast, but he's no Barry Allen.
He's a leech.
Yeah, but definitely Spider-Man has been a tried and true, tested through the bad and the good, thing that I will always hang on to.
Yeah.
One of the funny things though was when I would travel a lot with my family because my father was a pilot and we would move around a lot for work. We would be in airports all the time, so I would get these little comic books that are they almost look like a big Post-it note, they're square, and they're things like Archie's Double Digest, or then you had oh man, what was his name? He looks like Deadpool, but he has a red mask, but it looks like a bandana over his face. Grifter. Grifter was a great series that a lot of people don't really appreciate. And it was during that 90s era of ammo belts and pockets. Everybody had pockets and ammo belts, and even people who didn't have guns had a million pockets on them.
Yeah.
The classic Cyclops with the yellow. He had the waistband and then the shoulder band, and then they all just had pockets.
The Rob Liefeld experience I got. That's the thing about that era, especially that era of the X-Men, the New Mutants and stuff. Everybody was grotesquely big. And they had these outfits that just made no sense whatsoever.
No function.
Yeah, and of course the women had to have as little clothes on as possible.
And the biggest boobs that you will ever see.
Nothing wrong with that, but
it's just disproportionate. And then the more scantily clad their armor or clothes were, the more powerful they were as well.
Yeah, Carol Danvers when she was Miss Marvel, her character is a military person. I don't see anybody in the military that would want to wear that kind of outfit with as much exposed skin that's out there. one cut and you're gonna
It's mortally wounded.
Yeah, I mean that's why I love what Portland local Kelly Sue DeConnick did with Captain Marvel when Carol Danvers got her promotion. She gave Carol Danvers, the new Captain Marvel, an outfit that you could imagine a soldier wearing. That's a little too bright, so maybe she's not going to be hiding in the shadows or anything like that. But it was a good outfit to put on.
Yeah.
So.
What about you, Tim? Do you have any favorite heroes or characters?
Well, yeah. I look at my sweet ass tattoo. Rose City Comic Con this year. Ended up getting my first tattoo on my right arm here of the Superman logo. Nice. Because I think back, initially, my introduction to Superman was the Christopher Reeve movie, and initially I wasn't a huge fan of it. But I remember reading in the news one day that DC planned to kill off Superman.
Oof.
And I was angry. I was like, how the fuck are they going to kill off Superman? Why, without thinking that it's a marketing gimmick, they're not going to permanently kill him. They're gonna bring him back some way. But it made me kind of analyze my thoughts on the character. And, and then of course with Christopher Reeve, when he had his terrible accident, and how he was able to, through his actions after the accident, essentially embody what Superman is about. Mm-hmm. And that's just, being there, helping people, fighting for what you think is right, I guess. Superman is definitely one that always near and dear to my heart. I mean, it better be because I got a tattoo of the guy.
Yeah.
And secondly, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends was my intro, and there was actually a 70s TV show.
Yeah.
That horrible show, but
it was so good. It was so good. It makes the best memes.
And that's probably 40 years ago. We're going to make a show. It needs to be a meme. Yeah. No, but that character though, Peter Parker, whether it's the classic Peter Parker or the Ultimate Spider-Man version, he is conflicted. He also wanted to become a hero initially for not the right reasons. He wanted to make some money off of it. Yeah. And I mean, that's what I really love about what Stan and Steve Ditko did with that character. They didn't make him the typical, milk drinking Boy Scout. Peter Parker was a human. I mean, because I've thought about it myself. I mean, if let's say I got bit by a radioactive spider, is my first reaction going to be to go off and save people? No, it's going to be to get famous, get money, get women. I would fail horribly, but still.
And like you said, like Peter Parker, Spider-Man was one of my first introductions to comic books, and it's how real the character is. I mean, it was one of the first characters to start off in high school and deal with high school.
Yeah, I mean, he was typically teenagers were the sidekicks. So, you had your Robins, of course, Bucky, they ended up bringing Bucky. No, Bucky wasn't around during the Silver Age, but they had Speedy. With Green Lantern. They had other teenage sidekicks, but Spider-Man was the first time where a teenager actually took center stage on the role. But, that character, and of course other characters along the way. Growing up in the late '80s, you couldn't help but be a Batman fan, at least at some point. I mean, I'm not a Tim Burton fan, but there was no way he was going to fail with that first Batman movie. I mean, Jack Nicholson alone as the Joker. My favorite line from the Joker in Batman was after the Joker gasses the museum. He meets up with Vicky Vale, and then they get into their little thing, and she screams, "You're crazy!" And he goes, "And I thought I was a Pisces." Just little things like that.
You got to do it in the Jack Nicholson voice.
And I thought I was a Pisces.
And I thought I was a Pisces.
Yeah, things like that. The Punisher, of course, definitely.
You were talking about movie adaptations of comic book series. So you touched on Batman. I'm pretty sure the rest of the world is familiar with all of the iterations of Spider-Man and the hits and misses with all of those. Do you have a favorite superhero movie?
Mine, I would probably say, would be The Avengers. Just, to me, that movie was probably one of the first times that seeing a movie, it didn't feel like an adaptation. It felt like a living, breathing comic book to me. Especially the scene at the end where the camera is circling the team and they're the Avengers for the first time. Yeah. It really felt like, a living, breathing comic book.
Like, 8 years of, like, leading up to that moment as well?
Not even that. I mean, the Iron Man came out in 2008. That was 4 years.
2007?
2008 for Iron Man. Avengers came out in 2012.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it seems like it was so long ago.
Well, it really does, which makes me feel old. But but what Marvel's been able to do on the movie end is nothing short of amazing. Because if you think back, before Iron Man came out, casual fans today may think Iron Man is one of Marvel's biggest stars. He really wasn't.
No.
Iron Man was a B player at best. People were familiar with what he looked like, but not necessarily the history of that character. And then you had a great team they put together. I mean, Kevin Feige, amazing producer, and Kevin Feige learned at the hands of Richard Donner and his wife. Oh. He was actually part of the team that helped create the X-Men. So,
okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the X-Men movies, of course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was like, wait, what?
No. But no, Kevin, transitioned over. I guess Marvel took a shining to him after the Marvel Studios. They tried to have some sort of a deal with Ari Arad, and Ari just wanted Spider-Man and nothing else, so he stayed with Sony. Just what Robert Downey Jr. You can't think of anybody else that could be Tony Stark.
He embodies Tony Stark's life, if you think about it.
And it's great too, because I've always been a Robert Downey Jr. fan, but in the 90s, early 2000s, he was not going through a good patch in his life. It
was Tony Stark.
True, but that movie was about redemption for Tony Stark, and ultimately became redemption for Robert Downey Jr. as well. And that's, I think about celebrities like that who I see do stupid stuff like Lindsay Lohan, Shia LaBeouf. People who, I think Shia LaBeouf is talented. I think Lindsay Lohan is talented. Charlie Sheen is talented. But you see people like that with that level of talent fucking up. You just, not many people get the opportunity to play make-believe in Hollywood. No. And when you see someone with talent that could actually kick some major ass, just throw it all away. You just want to go, when you see them, you want to slap them in the face to get them back into reality. But, seeing Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man was amazing. And then the fact how they took some of the other characters like Thor. I'm not a fan of Thor in the comic books.
No?
No.
Oh, man. Specifically, runs like Thor Max, or when they go a little more medieval with it, it is so much fun. Sorry, we have some fire engines coming through.
Yeah. Moore is probably laughing right now. See, it's not New York, you sons of bitches. Well, she'll probably hit me for that impression too. No, I don't think you sound like that, Maura. But anyway, no, Thor for me though was always just boring to read. Now, granted, it wasn't Hercules bad. I hate Hercules.
Well, it was also hard to read because you would see it in like Old English cursive when they write.
Thou dost protest too much.
Well, not only that, like the word bubbles had like the fancy writing,
calligraphy. Yeah. And it's just, I'm also too just not a big fantasy fan. I mean, the Lord of the Rings. I respect what it does, but I'm not. I'm just not a fantasy type of person, Yeah. So not my cup of tea. But what Chris Hemsworth has been able to do with that character, what the Marvel team has been able to do. Now, granted, it was a bumpy start. The first two Thor movies were not the best, but Thor Ragnarok.
Oh yeah!
Wow.
Highlight of the year. definitely.
One of them, yeah. I mean, it's and I was talking to Sterling about it too. I mean, in a sense, Thor Ragnarok was a way to kind of reboot that character without changing the team behind it. Because everything that we've known about Thor in the movies to date was wiped out and reset.
Yeah. Odin's
gone. Hopefully Hela makes her way back because Cate Blanchett in Thor Ragnarok, even though she wasn't in it that much, surprisingly, I would love to see her back because she was amazing. But yeah, just how Marvel was able to take those characters, the lesser known characters, and give them life and make them seem important. Just was as a comic book fan. You can't get any better, and it makes me disappointed that DC didn't take some of Marvel's mojo, or just how they went about creating the series.
Yeah.
Because Justice League recently came out. We both
Seems
saw
like they're doing it backwards, where they're like team and then individuals.
I wouldn't even go that far. I mean, there was a video from Midnight's Edge on YouTube, and I would definitely recommend if you find them on YouTube, subscribe. They have some really good movie analysis. But they talked about how Marvel created their shared universe and how DC did it. Marvel, when they first came out, did not tell anybody they were making a shared universe.
Yeah.
It was not announced. It was a surprise to people. That little coda at the end with Nick Fury, I want to tell you about the Avengers Initiative, written by Portland resident Brian Bendis.
Yeah. And waves himself.
Yeah, moving over to DC, which is a big shock. Yeah. But Marvel, for the first couple of movies, did not really let people in on the fact that they were building up to the Avengers. But by the time the post-credits scenes for Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2 came out, people came to realize what was going on. So that by the time the Avengers came out, people were ready for it. Essentially, Marvel made it to where the average fan could go in, watch one movie, and thoroughly enjoy that movie, and not have to worry about remembering a certain plot from this movie 3 movies down the road. Whereas DC went the other way around. Yeah. And I think that was their big mistake. It's not even tonal shifts like Zack Snyder making everything so dark and depressing. I just think that they set the expectation that it was going to be a shared universe from the start, and people were there were a lot of expectations of what it would be that they could not accomplish from Man of Steel, from Batman v Superman, and I think they did hurt themselves too by bringing Batman v Superman around first. Mm-hmm. To me, seeing the big three, seeing Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman in the first frame, in the frame together, should have happened in Justice League.
Yeah,
the fact is, they just threw everything at the wall in Batman v Superman, and it did not stick. Which
I mean, like, if you were looking at it linearly, how much more fun would it be to have a Justice League movie where everybody's working together, and then Batman kind of being a little like Batman and being like, this guy is way too strong, and like this crazy thing couldn't take him down. What if something happens? You know what I mean? Like,
well, the cartoon definitely touched upon that.
Yeah. But it would just be such it's a little more of a flow, mm-hmm. rather than like, hey, you took down a building in that movie. Not a lot of people remember, and then like no one even had an idea of who Batman was going to be when they even made it, and then everybody was kind of stunned by Batfleck. I mean, I really liked it, but it's really hard for people to be invested into characters that, one, they might not even know of or even know exist.
Yeah.
And two, know very little about. And I mean, I've been following DC since I can't even remember. And when you think about the Justice League, you think about founding members, and it's a little bit different. I mean, yeah, you have Aquaman, you have the big three, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, but you have characters like Barry Allen and Aquaman, but then you had the Atom, or I'm trying to remember who were in the original film. Oh, Green Lantern, things like that. And like, yeah, you see little hints here and there, but you don't really get to see the whole dynamic team together, which is it's a little disheartening because, you know, they might be, you know, throwing some ideas around and playing stuff around, but rather than sitting, getting a cohesive idea together and pushing it forward as a whole, they're just throwing one thing out at a time and trying to make it line up.
And also, too, Warner Brothers is reactionary with the DC movies. I mean, people had some major complaints about the length of Batman v Superman, the color tone; it was too muted, the dark, depressing storyline, and they seem to address all of that in Justice League by turning up the colors, by throwing in some humor, by cutting the runtime down to 2 hours when Justice League was supposed to be a 2-part movie.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So essentially, they stuck a 4-hour movie, condensed it down to 2. My suspicions is that I don't think they necessarily edited down 2 movies into one. I think they just took part 1 of the idea, and part 2 of Justice League was supposed to be the debut of Darkseid. Which unfortunately we're probably not going to see anytime soon, which is an absolute shame.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you get a really difficult situation. Zack Snyder and his daughter, that was really, really rough.
Yeah.
If you don't know, Zack Snyder's daughter did pass away. He stepped away from the film to kind of be with his family, which in any situation would almost mean the end of a project. Even on that scale. And he brought in, or I don't know who brought him in, but
Warner Brothers already had Joss Whedon on call because he was going to write and direct the Batgirl movie.
Oh.
But apparently, word is that they had him also kind of quote unquote assisting with the Justice League in terms of script rewrites very early on. So by the time it was announced that Joss Whedon was taking over for Zack Snyder, he was already in that spot. Zack Snyder was on the way out. Now, I remember back to when I did some writing for the great website Latino Review Media, and one thing that frustrated me anytime I talked about anything related to the DC universe were the Zack Snyder fanboys.
I mean, he does good work. His lack of color kind of hurts my brain. I mean, you see it in a lot of his work, specifically Batman, a champion of the light. I mean, and everything you see is so dark, and you have these 2 characters who are supposed to be mirror opposites, Batman and Superman.
Yeah.
And you even see it in the cities that they live in, like Gotham is like in perpetual darkness, like almost all the time. And then Metropolis is like, even on a rainy day, has more light than Gotham. Yeah. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one big blunder that he did. I don't think he understood the Superman character. Now, I'm not the type of person who thinks that Superman, the character, must always be portrayed as Christopher Reeve did it. No. You know, as you know, the James Bond movie franchise shows, you know, when you get a different actor, you get different people that are creating a story, you can find new aspects of that character to showcase. You know, I think of Superman Returns back in 2006, not a perfect movie, but Brandon Routh as Superman, damn. I mean, yeah. It is a shame that movie was not as successful as it should have been.
Fun fact about that movie, so Brandon Routh, the kid who played Superman, his chest and pectoral muscles were not as pronounced as other people.
Yeah.
So they made the Superman shield smaller to make his chest look bigger. And it was a riot to figure that out. It was so funny.
That's a nice size shield, Superman.
Shut up.
But, I don't know. I don't dislike Zack Snyder as a director. He's not my favorite, but I do think... I don't think he was the right choice to run that franchise, at least from the outset. I think you did need to It's like if for the Star Wars franchise, if they started off on the Empire Strikes Back, I don't think Star Wars would be as well received as it is because having your heroes end on a dark note. That is not the way to start off a movie franchise. It should have started off positive and then give them something really dark and deep to fight. And I'm excited to see what they do for the future because I do think they do have some building blocks they can definitely build from. Gal Gadot is Wonder Woman.
Yeah. And I do feel like we're focusing on a lot of negatives for the Justice League movie, but you did have some really big standouts. The guy who played Aquaman, I'm not familiar with his name.
Jason Momoa.
Yeah, dude, he is so good. He's so fun. And that was, like, the best part about it. Like, I've seen interviews with him outside of the show, but promoting the show. And he'll bring his trident with him. And he's like, you want to see a cool trick? And he's, like, flipping his trident around and throwing it around. The guy has fun. Like, that's something that you need. And, I mean, seeing a lead actor playing a role like Cyborg, you don't see too many black superheroes in the forefront. And it was really cool to not only see a character like that, but also have his shining moments where it was, center stage, focusing on him kicking ass, even if it was for a short period of time.
Yeah. I mean, and we discussed it with Jason Momoa, though. Do we need to see him shirtless that much?
I feel like half of our audience will agree that we do.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Exactly. But okay, fun fact too about his scar. He has a really nice scar on, I believe, his left eye, if I'm not mistaken. He got in a bar fight, and he had plastic surgery to fix it. So that scar on his face is fixed.
But there needs to be some sort of a web series or something of just Jason Momoa just doing just going into the store. Hi, I'm Jason Momoa with my shirt off. I'm here to buy some milk. Or I don't know. I mean, the ladies will love it, but
I mean, and that's the fun thing too. Is like every Thor movie I've been to, I have been asked to go see Thor. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't have to go ask somebody to see Thor. I have friends who are like, hey, the guy who plays Thor is in this movie. We need to go see it because I heard his shirt is off. And it's like, some people want that. Some people want to just look at a good-looking person. Yeah. And it sells movie tickets. But then, like, I remember seeing Thor Ragnarok, and then they're like, oh, shit, this is really good. And I was like, yeah. Why do you think I want to go see it? Come on.
And speaking of Thor Ragnarok, I what is her name? Tessa, who played Valkyrie.
I'm going to have to IMDb that because I honestly, other than, I don't even know the name of the guy who plays Thor.
Chris Hemsworth.
Chris Hemsworth. I'm terrible with names.
But Valkyrie in that film was amazing.
Yeah. Oh my God. The best part was just her getting off the ship and just being like, hey, that's mine, and just fucking falling down drunk.
Yeah, or near the end of the film when she's on the ship with that big gun and whatnot. Yeah. Loved it. All right. That is Tessa Thompson. Who played Valkyrie, did a great job there. But speaking of DC, I even forgot about it too. DC was supposed to have a Justice League movie out before Iron Man, helmed by George Miller.
What?
Yep.
Holy crap!
Yeah, I mean when George Miller was producing Justice League, his last big film was Babe. But George Miller, if you don't know, Mad Max, he created the Mad Max series. He did the best segment on Twilight Zone, the movie, Nightmare on 20,000 Feet with John Lithgow. Great director. But yeah, we could have had the Justice League before. But DC, I don't know the specifics why, but we could have had that.
Yeah. Honestly, man, I feel like DC is killing it with their animation when they do the animated stories. Like, they're so good.
Or think about the CW verse.
Yeah.
I mean,
my gosh.
With Arrow,
I love
Supergirl.
The Flash. I don't know if you know it, but The Flash, a lot of the flyovers and the pan scenes between transitions is our lovely city of Portland, which is really, really great. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
They'll like CGI in the Star Labs, but it's right over the Moda Center. So like all of that is just downtown Portland.
I did not know that, and I've been watching that show for however long. Man.
Can we also talk about Jeff Goldblum in Thor? That was so funny. That I like. Not only was I not expecting Jeff Goldblum when I saw the announcement trailer, but it was so weird just seeing Jeff Goldblum, because I think the day prior I watched Jurassic Park 2, The Lost World.
Yeah.
And it just is so funny to see him acting and talking. And he's almost the same guy, other than the fact that his hair is probably a little bit grayer.
When the teaser trailer to Thor Ragnarok hit, I wrote a little review about it for Latino Review Media, and one thing I notated about Jeff Goldblum in that, and it was confirmed in the movie, is that it really came across as if they just picked Jeff Goldblum up at his house, already dressed like that, and that's just how Jeff Goldblum would act.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think Jeff Goldblum was playing a character. He was being himself with a little bit of blue makeup. Yeah. I mean, hearing some interview, there was a clip too of somebody from, I believe, What Culture interviewed him, but he had I believe it was either a New Day shirt, a WWE shirt, and he was asking, what is that? And, just didn't know about professional wrestling at all, and just Goldblum's response was funny.
Oh, wow.
But back to comics, though. Who would you say are some of your favorite comic book creators?
Well, Brian Michael Bendis has probably been in the most things that I've read, and he is like the nicest guy. We've had a few opportunities to meet him in person at autograph signings and things like that, and he'll take the time to appease the dumbest question that you ever have, which is like the best. And he's just so freaking friendly.
And he will give you a drone. At Rose City Comic Con in 2016, he was giving away gifts, and at one of his panels, and the first person who asked a question, he's like, "Oh, thank you for the question. Come on up, get your drone."
What?
He gave them like $1,000 drone.
Holy crap, dude! He's so cool, man. Now the other one, I'll say like Marvel, DC, kind of bounce around a little bit. Jeff Jones. I've got to meet him multiple times.
Oh man!
And it was at like the peak of like Green Lantern, when like the Spectrum War was going on and stuff like that. And I don't think I've ever been starstruck, but I think I was, which got me like really, really nervous. And a lot of my good luck was very accidental when it came into stuff. Like, I was just standing around because I was at my first convention. I don't know if you know this pretty well, but I don't do well when I'm surrounded by people. Like, I freak out, man. It drives me crazy. So I'm just like standing against this wall, and I'm just trying to like catch my bearings and like chill. And I'm just standing there, and this kid, I think he was just a few years younger than me. We ended up becoming really good friends. We're still friends to this day. His name's Gil. And he just rolls up and he's like, "You in line to see Jeff Jones?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, you're in the front of the line." And I'm like, "What?" And I'm just standing there and I'm just like, what is going on? And I didn't see it, but there was a sign that said Jeff Jones autographs, and I like stood there, and then I looked to my right, and there's a line of like 80 people now. and I'm like having a mild like panic attack, just trying to grab my bearings. And I was with one other friend, and like both of our first con, and I meet this kid who's probably like 5 years younger than me, but he's like, "Oh man, I've been going to these cons since I was 10." And I'm like, "Dude, this is the best." and followed him the whole way around. We went to panels, we went to Artist Alley, all this cool stuff. So I got a really good Sherpa through this whole experience. But first thing I did, right through walking through the door, I met Jeff Johns.
Nice.
And I lost my mind, and I couldn't talk. I was just like,
He's like Oddjob from Goldfinger.
And it was crazy because the Blackest Night had just ended. And I was at my comic book shop, and I got a very, very rare variant of the final product where it's... ever seen Michelangelo's painting where he's like... Adam is like hand out to God. It's something like that, and it's a bunch of the lanterns, and then there's a white lantern hand, and it's a 1 in 500 variant.
Oh man,
yeah. And he like looked at it, and he was like, "Holy shit!" And I was like, "Yeah." And he autographed it. So I have this really, really great variant autographed by Jeff Johns.
Nice.
And the dude probably thinks I'm stalking him because, like, I think in that year I ran into him like 3 times. No joke. And not on purpose. It was never on purpose. I was just there and stuff happened to be going on.
Now tell us about the restraining order he took.
Yeah, right. And then going back to the Marvel. So... There's actually a team that I like. It's a two Spider-Man team, and it is Humberto Ramos is one of the best artists you'll ever see. But it's more my flavor of art, where it's a little bit cartoony, but it's also pretty realistic, which is kind of weird. And then, oh my God, he just finished up a really good run of Iron Man. I'm spacing out right now on his name.
Dan Slott?
Dan Slott. Holy shit. How did I forget that?
Okay.
So I got to meet Dan Slott, but I had been following his work for so long, especially with Spider-Man. And I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, but the dude had to like deactivate Twitter for a little bit because he was getting death threats about Superior Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Did you ever read that run?
I did. It was a good run. Definitely one you need to stick through to the very end.
Yes.
But it also is kind of indicative of certain elements of comic culture. I'm hesitant to say it represents a large portion of comic culture because I think social media kind of amplifies smaller voices larger than their influence may really be.
Yeah.
But there are certainly people that are fucking nuts and that just take things way too seriously. And put it this way, even if Dan Slott wrote a story of Spider-Man just doing horrendous things, he can be fired and someone else can come along.
Right.
I mean, if you don't like it, there's something else out there.
And you don't have to read it.
No one's putting a gun to your head. No one's taking money out of your pocket to force you to read something like that. So if you don't like it, you don't like it, and that's okay to say, hey, not a fan. I mean, the Nick Spencer Captain America storyline, he seems like a nice guy. I wasn't a fan, and what I've read from it's finally showing up on Marvel Unlimited, Secret Empire. Not a fan of that either, but I don't think he needs to die.
No.
I think he needs, I would like to see more of his work. I don't think he's bad at what he's done. It's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah. No, and I get it because a lot of people felt that way with Dan Slott. And I had been running with Dan Slott for so long that everything he touched kind of turned to gold. Mm-hmm. So I was like sitting there and I was like, I don't like it. I don't like the idea, but I'm going to let you go with it because I trust you. And
it's the same way in wrestling, believe it or not, because wrestling and comics do have a lot of parallels.
Oh, yeah.
Fans do need to have a little bit of patience to see where a story is going, because it may not always have the greatest start off point. It may be an awkward beginning of a storyline, or it just may not be that good. But that doesn't mean that by the time they get to the end of the particular story they're trying to tell, that you're not going to enjoy what you did. And again, if you don't like it, you don't like it.
Yeah.
Voice your opinion at that point, but you can't read part one of a 24-issue run and say, this sucks.
Yeah, and they're like 15 pages long. You couldn't even get enough out of it. Mm-hmm. The thing that I will say that was like the best about Superior Spider-Man is it led into Spider-Verse, and you could see the team had so much fun with Spider-Verse because they tied Spider-Man to multiple different universes, which was really, really cool.
Yep.
But then they even did there's a famous game called Marvel vs. Capcom.
Yep.
And in one of the comic books, they actually kill the character inside the Marvel vs. Capcom universe. So, like, they're like, I don't know who this is. It's probably a clone, but Spider-Man's dead in that universe. And then they made a 1970s ripoff of Spider-Man canon, which was the coolest thing ever. So, in Japan, they had a character named Spider-Man, and he had a giant robot, and he fought crime. And I think it was on TV, and it was in comic form for maybe 10 issues.
Yeah, that TV show in Japan, that's the one that they brought to America, and they did the same. They used the same method that they did for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Essentially, they took out the Asian actors, replacing with Americans, but then during the action scenes when everybody's all dressed up, it doesn't matter. I mean, you're not going to know that it's a Japanese guy doing it. So, that's how they had the Spider-Man show from the 70s at that point. But, yeah, go on.
They made that canon, and it was super funny. So, not only did Marvel acknowledge it, but there's there's a book that's been out, and there's a new movie in the works, Ready Player One. They touch on that as well, and it blew my mind that they not only have the wherewithal to acknowledge that it exists, but the fact that they know it exists is just awesome. But yeah, Dan Slott, great guy.
Yep.
What about? Oh, okay. One more, because it's not a.
He's like a little kid here. Oh my god! One more.
No, it's not a writer, but his name is Frank Quietly. Probably one of the best artists that I've ever met. Mm-hmm. I met him in San Francisco, and I was at a book signing at Atomic Comics in San Francisco. And I don't know if you've ever been to Atomic Comics. It's one of the coolest comic book shops in San Francisco. When I went, they had a freak show because it was a whole event. So they had freak shows for entertainment. They had an open bar, which was amazing. So I watched a guy take a hose, put it through his ear, through his nose, through his mouth, back through his other ear, back out his mouth, drop it all the way down into a cup, maybe 6 feet down, and drink out of it. So that was so cool.
Oh my god.
And then Frank Quietly rolled up, and I didn't realize it, but I had been, mesmerized by the freak show that was going on. But and I say freak show literally, that's what they called themselves, the River City Freak Show or something like that. And but in the comic book store, there were toilet bowl seats all across the store. Mm-hmm. So whenever they had an artist or a writer or anybody famous come into the store, they gave them a toilet bowl seat, and they had to draw or write on it, and that was art that they hung up in the store. So Frank Quietly, nicest guy, brings his toilet bowl seat on a bike, just roll on up, and it's a guy's head coming out of the toilet. It's the funniest thing. But he worked on a series, All-Star Superman, which was really good. But he will forever be in my mind as the artist for Batman and Robin. And it was really, really cool. He worked on characters like Flamenco and, what was her name? Serendipity or something like that. She got shot in the head and has just a giant hole in her head. But his use of color in Batman was just so impressive. He brought pinks, purples, reds, blues to light. in a dark palette, which was really, really cool.
Yep. And with that, part one of our discussion on comic books is in the books. We'd like to thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. Feel free to tune in again next week for part two of this discussion. As always, feel free to subscribe to the podcast on your local podcast platforms that carries our show. We would definitely appreciate it. And as always, we would love to thank Christopher Lazarek for his wonderful theme song. Head to his website, ChristopherLazarek.com, for information on how to download his EP, Here's to You, which is available on all digital platforms. Thank you.
Jarvis.
Welcome, Holmes.
I am Iron Man. You think you're the only superhero in the world? Mr. Stark, you've become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet. Who the hell are you? Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.